I don't think about you any day, anyhow. It don't matter, not a while since I thought about you, babe. Hey, since I thought about you, babe. Hey, since I thought about you, baby. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Love of Fishing podcast. Today we have a lot of things to talk about. We have a lot going on Lake Ontario. We have a lot going on with the salmon fishery. We have some videos to watch. We have some discussions to have. I'm your host, Lyle Gator, and I just want to thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Love of Fishing podcast. I've been hosting this podcast now for 3 years. I've had some amazing guests on board. We have 27 episodes up to this point. Out on YouTube and Spotify that you can listen to on your way to work, maybe while you're working, maybe while you're supposed to be listening to your wife. I don't know. You can listen to it whenever. But it's a huge honor to be able to bring this podcast. I try and find time to record as many episodes as I can. I'd like to get back into having guests on. If you guys have any guests that you'd like to see me interview, talk to, please leave those in the comments below. If you haven't listened to the podcast before, like I said, there's 27 episodes. Most of them have guests. I try to bring in people in science, in the industry in some way. Had a taxidermy artist, other guides. You know, we got it all going on here. And it's a Great Lakes-based podcast for those of you who are not listeners. For those of you who are listeners, I want to thank you for tuning in week after week. Whenever I do release an episode, I know some of you personally now because of the podcast, which I'm thankful for those relationships. It's been a great thing for me to produce this podcast. So thank you to those who listen and welcome to those who are new. Today we're going to be talking about salmon. We have some issues here. And for those of you who don't know, I'm on the Zone FMZ 20 Council. FMZ 20, Lake Ontario. Council means representing anglers in my area. Obviously, I'm a Niagara boy. I'm from Port Dalhousie. From the west side, baby. From the west side. And I love my salmon. I grew up salmon fishing. I remember being 6 years old, catching my first salmon with my papa. That's my grandfather, not my dad. And just falling in love with it. I remember walking the streams as a young child and seeing the salmon not only, complete their run, but this is also the time that I learned about their life cycle and how beautiful, but how tragic it is, the fact that they only live so long. And then at the end of the 4 years, they die every single time. Now, I wanted to preface this discussion with that image because it is a beautiful run. They're beautiful fish. They live extraordinary lives, whether they're in the ocean or the Great Lakes. Obviously, the ocean, they can swim so much farther. And this idea that they return to their natal stream is really kind of a beautiful thing. Without getting into the poetics of it, I want to talk about the issues that we have. We have a great salmon fishery on Lake Ontario, maybe the best in the world in terms of numbers. This year was no exception. In fact, it actually was an exception because it was so amazing. It was exceptional in its quality. Size was down. Look at the board, the GOSD board. Size was down. Only a couple fish over 30 pounds. That's not good. Numbers, way up. Wow. There were times in July that we went out and got 40 bites in a 6-hour morning trip. That's incredible. Truly, truly incredible. Usually numbers that we see in the springtime. Springtime fishing in Niagara, typically very hot. This year was not overly good. Kind of spotty. The last few years, things have been spotty. And I want to remember that when we start talking a little bit about the fall fishery. Not that I'm going to do a complete season in review, but I think anyone who fished Lake Ontario this year can agree that the fishing was incredible, the numbers were phenomenal, the size, they could have been bigger. But there's a lot of fish in that 20-pound range. Really, really great summer fishing. Incredible. I think a lot of that had to do with the way the wind blew. You know, there's always going to be factors that make fish easier or harder to catch. I know myself in the West End, I fished mostly between, I'll say, Jordan and the Niagara River. There's not many years that I run west. I ran west quite a few times this year. The water was nice and cool. We didn't have to battle that, 150 plus bite, where to get any kind of good temperature, you got to be down, way down. We didn't have that a lot, and I think that's why, on the whole, a lot of people experienced great fishing. So how does this translate into what I'm talking about today? I guess I haven't really told you what we're talking about today. But if you're still with me, I want to talk about some of the issues plaguing our streams and our tributaries when fall comes around, because salmon have a very distinct life cycle. They spawn as little tiny minnows, they grow up, they live roughly 3 years, we'll say 3 years, eating the whole time, feeding. This is when they're in the lake, this is when we can catch them trolling. And then they return to their natal streams, and they attempt to spawn. And it's at this time where a lot of people get access to them. Maybe people that don't have boats, or who enjoy shore fishing. This is when they can contact these fish. But often these fish are in small creeks, rivers, streams, where they're very vulnerable to poor angling practice. This year, most recently in September, Ontario's largest salmon-producing river, the Ganaraska River, was closed to angling as of September 1st. It will reopen on October 15th for an extended steelhead season, but it was closed. And if you don't know anything about the Gani, you can look up some videos online. You can see the sheer numbers of fish that run that river. It is regarded as the largest recruitment river on Lake Ontario. The Credit River is also big. The Ganaraska receives more fish. It is more prolific in that sense. And this year, and for the foreseeable future, it's now close to angling. And there's lots of press on that. There's lots of videos, guys talking about it. I want to bring to light a few things pertaining to this river and to the closure, and not so much looking at it from a resident's perspective. I know Ian West does a great job at covering it because he's from Port Hope, and certainly there are local ramifications that are real. It'll be felt throughout the community. It will feel different there. It will act different. This is going to force anglers to fish other creeks. But I'm going to look at it from a lake-wide perspective because I'm curious about when you limit the angling pressure on a river that's sort of a lifeblood of a lot of the lake, because we know these fish are naturally reproducing. What does that mean? First, I want to talk about where does this put people? Part of the fisheries goals, part of fisheries management is to provide angling opportunity. We have a rich history of sport fishing here in Ontario, and shore fishing is a big part of that. There are goals within the framework of the Ministry of Natural Resources that speak specifically to providing shore fishing opportunities. It is not intended that our salmon fishery or any fishery should be boat exclusive. There are plenty of people that do not have boats. I'm very blessed to have a boat. However, when it comes to talking about these management issues, we need to consider people without boats. Fishing needs to be accessible to anybody who wants to fish legally. So when you close a major river like this, And by the way, they closed it because the fish were too vulnerable. The natural geography, I'll call it, of the stream, the hydrology of the stream, did not lend itself well to fish having a fighting chance. They're limestone steps. The fish pile up at each little run, at the base of each step. And the angling etiquette that was displayed there time and time again was so poor that now they've closed the whole thing until October 15th. But where do these people go? Where do these snaggers go? Because when you close the river, these people do not just suddenly go, oh, you know what? That bad stuff that I was doing that I know is wrong, I'm just going to stop doing that now. They're going to go somewhere else. So where do those people go? Do they go to Bowmanville? Do they go to Cobourg? Do they go to the Rouge? Where do they go? Because there's lots of water that's still open until September 30th. Lots of opportunity to still shore fish, and if you want, to still poach, net, spear, all the above. And we're going to talk about that a little bit later. I've got a couple clips I want to run for our viewers on YouTube. For those listening on Spotify, bear with me. There's going to be a section where we watch videos. But where do those people go? Where do the snaggers go? And how do we deal with them? You know, we have a enforcement issue in Ontario. So few officers to protect so many natural resources. I'm not sure if closing the Ganney is necessarily going to be a self-containing issue. I think it's great that it's closed. I certainly, in my response, favored the closure. But these people have to go somewhere, and we still have to deal with them because they're committing atrocities against our fishery. It's disgusting. Now, another issue with closing the Ganney to angling is obviously the dead fish. Ian talks about this in his reports. These fish all die. They're going to stink up the town. So we got dead fish. I don't know. I think that's kind of easy to deal with. The town can come in. They can clean up the carcasses if they want. Or they have to just let it rot. I don't know. But that, I don't know. To me, that's sort of minimal. To sort of discuss this issue, I think it's great to call on the YouTube community to give us an example of exactly what it looks like. Because if you haven't gone to a creek and you haven't seen this in action, it's almost hard to picture what this could look like and how people could think that it's okay to do this, I guess. We have a few different issues going on here, but I want to give thanks to Dave, Outdoors Dave. Check him out. He just has a very, I'll call it, wholesome video. He keeps a really level head through this, and I'm showing the footage now. And basically, he's wearing a head cam and going along a creek where he stumbles upon 3 people, one with a giant pole, and some people at the base of a run with snow fence. And the guy with the pole is waving the pole in the water to scare the fish towards the snow fence where the other people are presumably collecting the fish. And this seems to be on a very small creek. The video is called Salmon Run 2024, Protect the Fishery, Expose Illegal Fishing. And yeah, the guy is just, ugh. It's so wrong. I'm going to do my best here to say things as well as I can. I want to keep it real. I've never been about sugarcoating things. Obviously, this kind of behavior is bad, but there's a lot going on here. There's a few different videos like this out here. I'm going to say it. The videos usually depict people that do not speak English that well, and certainly I do not want to overgeneralize here and make any kinds of claims that these new Canadians are all poachers. They're not. There are plenty of people that are stewards for the environment, that are new Canadians that may have an accent. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, when you go to the creeks and you see this kind of behavior, or you see people fishing over their limit, this is a problem. It's a problem, and it's disgusting, because as someone who was born here, I want to protect what we have here, and I don't want to see it ruined by people that are seemingly think they're immune to the rules, think they're above the rules, that they can just come and do whatever they want. I'm not okay with that. I'm okay with everybody having the chance to fish legally, to keep their limit that they're legally entitled to, but they have to use angling methods. They have to do what's legal. They can't use snow fencing. They can't use gaff hooks. They can't snag. That's not cool. That's not okay. Now, why I want to talk about this is because I think we're starting to run into problems where now, I'll call it, there's one side that sees these videos and very quickly can jump to a conclusion that they don't like people who are new Canadians or immigrants or, people that don't speak their language. That's a bigger issue. Guys, whether you see them on the river or not, they're there, and we're letting more of these folks in every day. But that's a different issue, whether you agree or disagree with that. The issue that us anglers might have a chance at stopping or changing is the conduct on the river, which is why I wanted to show this video, and I'll show another one too, but to raise awareness that this is happening. So you got to call the tips line. You've got to post a video. You've got to stop these people while you're fishing. If someone's doing something illegal, you can say something to them and say, hey, do you know that that's illegal? And you can report them. Where I'm going with all this is I think we're on a slippery slope, because there's that camp of people that now overgeneralize and say, well, all those immigrants, they're all snaggers, they're all poachers, we don't like them. And I worry that falling into that kind of mentality is going to be harmful and dangerous. I don't want to see things go that way. I want to see things go in an educational direction. Unfortunately, there are people that are too ignorant to listen, to want to learn. You don't know. Maybe that's how they caught fish in their country that they came from. That doesn't make it okay here. It's just a really tough issue. We have to expose it. But at the end of the day, we have an enforcement issue. And it really stings. For people that are stewards of the environment, it really stings to see this kind of behavior. And it always rears its ugly head at this time, because there are massive fish going in very shallow, skinny water. They have one goal in mind, and that's to run up the river as far as they can and spawn. They get into tight spaces, and they're very vulnerable. We are not going to change that. That is the physiology of that fish. How we deal with it as a community, as human beings, with each other, that's a different issue. It's almost no longer a fisheries issue. It's a humankind issue. It's a laws issue. It's brutal. It's brutal. But, certainly there are lots of people that know this is happening, that can do more to stop it. I talked a while ago with a good friend of mine who's fished all over the world, and we just talked about different licensing practices that we had, that he had seen in different places that he goes, because I think that's important to remember. If you've only ever fished in Ontario, this is not the only way we can do things. It's not just about, hire more officers. It's as simple as that. There's a reason why. Maybe it's the budget. Well, how do you increase your budget? You have to increase revenue. I think that our fishing license is way too cheap. For the opportunities that we have in Ontario, we have very good opportunities. one of the models that I'm interested in is what they do out west with buying specific licenses for specific rivers. And they even do it down to the specific section of the river in some areas. And this is interesting to me. It's kind of like getting a tag. There's so many tags available, and if you get the tag, then you can fish this stretch, or you can fish this lake. And it's not that the tags are overly expensive, it's that they're regulated. Now, obviously, there has to be a balance between the fee charged to then match how you regulate it with staff, online licensing systems, officers, all that stuff. It is overhead. And generally, I'm not a fan of increasing bureaucracy or increasing the size of government. But in this instance, it seems sort of like that now the community is doing the policing. Like, we've got these YouTube videos, we've got social media, which I get is not legal action. It's not the law. But there's never been a time where you can be exposed more than now. You do something wrong on the river and someone's got their phone, boom. You might just be going viral. So with all this power that we have to manage each other, to make claims, to provide evidence, I think it's very interesting, and I think it's worth a dive into looking at different management practices with how licensing works. On the Niagara River, we have big flows. We have huge water. People sometimes snag fish, sure they do. But generally, it's very difficult to do that. So I don't deal with a lot of snaggers. I don't see it a lot. That's the river I fish the most, So it really comes down to each fishery. So if we managed it where there were tags for the Niagara River, you can buy a seasonal tag, you can buy a fall season tag, you can buy a spring season tag, you can buy a year-round tag. Is that going to limit the people that go down there? And the river's kind of a tough spot to manage because, you'd have to have officers walking down. It's a big walk. It's fairly dangerous in terms of terrain. So maybe that's not a great example of a fishery that could be managed with tags, but certainly the credit, you could do that. You could do it on the Ganny. It's easy enough to patrol. Check tags. Do you have your Ganny tag? Yes. Okay. And it just at least raises the bar where no tag, okay, there's your ticket, done. That's it. It doesn't have to be a guessing game of, well, we saw the person snagging, but they are using a spoon or they're using this and they had bait on their hook and then it's tough to lay charges, this and that. We can make it way easier. And I don't know that that's the end-all be-all solution, but what I'm saying is there are lots of different ways to manage a fishery. And if you're a listener to the show, I just want to encourage you to think big and to think about how things could be done, how things are done in other places. Not that that's maybe going to make a difference. I don't know. This just upsets me. I see this kind of conduct. I put 60,000 fish in with a great team of people every year so that they can be enjoyed and so that they can support multiple fisheries, whether it be in the open lake or then in the fall. So I have a vested interest. I'm also a guide, but it's really the time that I put in with all the other volunteers. That's why this gets my blood boiling. Like I've sweat invested in this for 5 years now. Anyways, guys, I hope you enjoyed this discussion. If you ever have any comments, concerns, questions, feel free to send me an email at hookedonniagara@gmail.com. If you want to be on the show or have an idea of someone who you'd like to have on the show, you'd like to hear me talk to, drop a comment, drop a like. I'm building this podcast every year as quickly and as much as I can. There's only so many hours in a day. Right now I'm recording this at 6 a.m. on a Tuesday because I got a full day of work ahead. But this is a topic that's been on my mind. I also want to give a special shout out to all of the sponsors that helped me out at the recent Ontario Bass Nation High School qualifier. I brought a team of 2 very dedicated, excellent high school anglers to the Tri-Lakes in an attempt to qualify for Team Ontario for the high school level. We were not successful in that endeavor. However, we had a great week. The kids learned a lot about pre-fishing, about competitive fishing, competition, preparedness, execution. It was a very valuable trip. And it wouldn't have been possible without some great sponsors that I'm proud to work with. If you see my boat, I'm not all stickered up. I believe in forming really valuable relationships. I want to be a professional out there, and I want my word to mean something. So any product that I endorse, I hope those of you who know me, you'll know that it's a good product, that I'm not going to be backed by junk. So I just want to read off a thank you to those folks first. Peter's Tackle in St. Catharines. Angela and her staff always do a great job with any tackle needs. Fantastic people. I used to work there. She's really a pillar of the Niagara fishing community. Freedom Tackle. Thank you very much for creating some great products, some great stuff, really, from Freedom Tackle and the whole American Baitworks brand. Halo rods are part of that. All of my baitcast bass rods are all Halo rods, the HFX series. I want to thank Eternal Lithium. Recently formed a partnership with Eternal Lithium, and they've got a 12-year warranty on their lithium batteries. They're good for 3,000 cycles. You know, they're a no-brainer. If you have lead-acid batteries, I was able to get rid of 3 batteries and replace it with 1. They're expensive. All lithium batteries are going to be expensive. But the weight savings and that ability to produce so much power with being able to run the battery down past 50% is really big. So if you want any more information on that, feel free to send me a text, send me an email. I can provide information on that. And I should say that if you want to buy a Eternal Lithium battery, use code WILDLYLE and receive 10% off. That's a new thing for me, using the code. Eternal Lithium, thank you. Lucky Strike Baitworks, makers of the greatest nets, I think, available to anyone fishing in Ontario and Canada. Their rubberized mesh is next level in terms of not getting hooks stuck in it and protecting the fish. I love their big, long, yellowed-handled net. You'll see that in a lot of my photos. Best net going. Thank you, Lucky Strike Baitworks. Mustang Survival, thank you for your support. I have a lot of life jackets and a lot of float suits. They're all Mustang. Thank you, Mustang. Edible Options. Jen, thank you very much. Always amazing, amazing baked goods from Edible Options. It is also gluten-free. I always tell people it is the best bakery and it's also gluten-free. It's not one of those deals where, oh, it's gluten-free and it's really good. You know, it's like a caveat that it's good. No. It is the best bakery, and it's also gluten-free, which blows my mind because I've had some gluten-free stuff, and it sucks. Not from Edible Options. Thank you, Jen. We have Be My Bait, a local bait manufacturer in the Niagara area, Rob Young and his daughters. Thank you, Be My Bait. Raven Tackle. Thank you to Dave and Jeff at Anglers International. Raven supplies some great terminal tackle. I use it all the time. They have fluorocarbon. They have floats. Suppliers of Cambison hooks. Just really essential stuff when you're guiding and fishing in the region, really, for salmon, steelhead, brown trout, any kind of fishing. Thank you, Raven. Trails End, North End Landscape Solutions. on the landscaping side of things. Thank you, Trails End. Great people in there. If you need any kind of bulk landscape items, mulch, soil, give them a call. They deliver. Or if you need a couple bags, need some decorative stones, need some advice. Very knowledgeable people. Been in business a long time in St. Catharines. They've got that one image, and his name's Uncle Barry, and he's eating dirt on the billboard. They've got it up right now. It's an old picture. I talked to Richard there about the origin story of that. Some wicked marketing there. Very catchy. Love it. Thank you, Trails End. Now, if I missed anyone on that sponsors list, you can go ahead and check out a few videos on Instagram where I thank them. If you want to learn more about these products, please feel free to let me know. I have info with all of them. I have connections and relationships with all of them. They're companies that I trust, which there's a lot to be said for trust these days. If you've listened the whole time, I'd like to thank you for your attention and your dedication to this podcast. I really hope to come out with more content this fall and winter, and I appreciate you listening. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing to the YouTube channel and following us on Spotify. I post the podcast to both platforms in hopes that I will reach more people so that I can continue to do what I love, which is make podcasts, fish, educate, I don't know, all the things. I just love it. I hope that you have a great day. I hope that the fishing season that you're in right now is fruitful. It is excellent. Go forth and do what you can to do a good job and to lift other people up in your fishing, in your life. It is good stuff to do. And with that, I will bid you farewell. Guys, it's Lyle Gator from the Love of Fishing podcast, and I'd like to thank you again for listening. Don't forget to get outside and go fishing. Peace.